if you're going onto someone's property, you have to make sure that that property is safe and reasonable for visitors or invitees to come on, and make sure that they are taken care of and they don't have an injury.
If you're injured on someone's property, how do you know if you have a case? We're going to talk to lawyer Steve Grover about that on today's episode of Ask the Lawyer. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me again.
As an injury lawyer, you've handled lots of premise liability cases. Can you give us an overview of what happens when someone is hurt on commercial property?
Essentially, unfortunately, if someone's going into a store and, they're in the sidewalk and there's ice everywhere and they fall, and they do suffer an injury because of someone's negligence of not taking care of the ice or snow. Obviously, in Alberta, there's the Occupiers Liability Act, which governs that, you've got a duty of care as a commercial owner to make sure that your premises are safe for invitees. And, there is a duty of care. And obviously, there's obligations to keep your premises clean and safe. So, if someone's going into a store for shopping, you want to make sure that the visitors or invitees have opportunity to know that they can go to the store and be in a safe and reasonable condition so they don't have to suffer an injury. And so that's pretty much outlined in the Occupiers Liability Act here in Alberta under Section 5.
Do you think that people have the wrong idea about slip and fall claims, that maybe the injuries aren't serious? What kind of injuries have you seen people sustain from these accidents?
Growing up in the 70s and 80s and watching, the Roadrunner and Coyote and seeing those kind of, the coyote slips and falls on the banana and everyone laughs. That's the general perception. You always think of the banana peel when someone's walking and a gentleman falls down and it's like in the cartoon and people are injured. People laugh at, he slipped on a banana. How could that be? That's pretty funny. But fortunately, yeah, we have represented people that are seriously injured, have herniated discs, have traumatic brain injuries, and they are serious claims because that person's life has changed in a second where, obviously they had a good life, they had a job, they had recreational activities they enjoyed doing. And fortunately now with a herniated disc or even a brain injury, their life has changed and it's affected your ability to work and also their family life and relationships with their wife and children. So they are serious cases. And, people have to know that these are, in society, these are important claims. And, if you're going onto someone's property, you have to make sure that that property is safe and reasonable for visitors or invitees to come on and make sure that they are taken care of and they don't have an injury.
I think anybody who's slipped on ice even once knows that you can get serious injuries from that. What constitutes a dangerous condition for a slip and fall claim? And can you give us some examples of when a business might be liable and then also when they might not be liable?
Yeah, the courts and the case law in Alberta has identified, hey, listen, you first of all have to identify there is a hazard. Is there a hazard that made the person fall? Like, was there water on the floor or ice or, even a grape or something, or some foreign substance like a soda pop exploded and went all over the floor of a grocery store. So you have to identify, number one, that there is a hazard. Usually if you're running a grocery store, you've got an obligation to make sure all the aisles are clean and you have a safety protocol that mopping is done and you keep records. So it's important to know that, you have to create there has to be a hazard. And there are cases that I haven't taken because people come in, they have a fractured knee. It's a serious injury. But when I ask them in the interview, do you know what made you fall? And they say no. And when you got up from the ground, was your pants wet and your leg wet? No. Those are kind of cases that are going to be very hard to litigate, and they could be subject to a summary dismissal application where the claim is dismissed by the court in Alberta outright. So those cases aren't worth taking on at this point in time.
If somebody is injured on a commercial property, can you walk us through the steps that they should take? Do they need to go to the ER? Do they need to notify the property owner right away? What should they do?
Yeah, unfortunately, say you're going in a grocery store and you fall down because of, soda pops all over the floor. First of all, people are quite embarrassed. It's just natural as a human being. Like, I want to make sure no one saw me fall and I just fell because I don't want them to think I'm, a weak person. But, if it does fall, don't be embarrassed about it because obviously, there's a substance there, a hazard there that caused you to fall. I would report the injury right away to the store manager. Make sure that an incident report is filled out. What you tell the store manager or the employees there, keep it limited, because that could be used against you in a court of law if you say the wrong thing. If you're seriously injured, you can't move, make sure they call 911, make sure that an ambulance shows up, takes you away. Don't be embarrassed about it, because, at the end of the day, it wasn't your choice to be in the accident. But I know people, I don't want to look like embarrassed in having taken away in a gurney and on a stretcher and into the ambulance. But, you're injured, make sure you get the proper medical care, go to the hospital, and thereafter go to your doctor and start treatment. Mm-hmm. I mean, paper trail is the most important part of any kind of litigation case, because you got to prove your case as a plaintiff in the court of law here in Alberta.
Yeah, document everything. What is the process at your law office for these types of claims to ensure that people get the money that they need to pay for their medical bills and other injuries that they sustained?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, with a slip and fall claim, hopefully the person who's injured does have private medical benefits. We do have a public insurance coverage here in Alberta. Usually Republicans refer it to as the socialist medical care we have in Canada, but we do have a medical coverage here. But that only covers doctor visits and x-rays. It's very limited, but most people will cover some private health coverage through Blue Cross or Manulife. There's limited coverage that's covered on physio and chiropractor and massage. And sometimes treatment providers we work with, we know this chiropractor that does injury cases, and he or she is going to work on an assignment saying, listen, you know what, I know you got a valid claim. I know Steve, he's a good lawyer. I know his office takes on valid claims. And I'm going to take the risk too that I want you to get better, and we'll treat you. We'll max out your benefits that you have. But at the end of the day, if that's maxed out, we'll do an assignment where at the end of the day, we'll get paid when you get paid, which is fair, because, a lot of people don't have money. And, the problem with these cases is if you're a plaintiff and you're injured, the courts expect you to mitigate your losses by going for treatment rather than sitting around just say, hey, I got a lower back. They want to make sure you've taken the effort to get the treatment and get better and try and get on with your life.
Steve, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today.
Great. Thank you for your time. Hope you have a great week.
Thank you, you too. And that's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest is Steve Grover. If you want to ask him a question about your situation, you can call the number on your screen. Thanks for watching. I'm Molly Hendrickson for Ask the Lawyers.